All right, chapter 4 now. We're going to quick talk on some of the ideas they mentioned in here. Land wiring for future needs. So let's take a look. Um, Picking the next wiring technology. All right. In LAN environments, we must operate with multi-vendor. Cisco, Netgear, Linksys, Belkin, you name it. These all must work in a LAN wiring environment. So if I'm using a standard like 568, that has been designed to be able to handle the multi-vendor. It really doesn't matter what the brand is, it should work. So this is really important. The need for this interoperability means we must have a strong internationally accepted standards. That's where the 568 and IEEE standards and all those things come from. If we are using standards based gear, if we're using standards based cabling, no matter the brand that plugs in, it should work. That's the idea behind that. So no proprietary technology dominates the field. Again, proprietary stuff may not work. That's why we go with the standards, adopt the standards. So because of this need for interoperability, once the standards are implemented, they tend not to change radically. Evolve, yes, but not change radically. So if I adopt a standards-based cabling system, it should work for a while. That's the idea. If I adopt a 568 or excuse me IEEE 802.11 substandard N or AC access point, things should work with it for a while. That's the idea behind all this. So we know standards-based network NICs and devices like that are important. Our wiring is no different. If your LAN needs stay fairly consistent, your cabling system should provide for that for a few years. And if you're installing a new cabling system, you should plan for the future. So if I'm installing a cabling system today and I need gigabit to the desktop, well, I best be picking out cabling that supports that, but I also should be picking out cabling that supports the next higher level. It should be able to handle 10 gigabit to my desktop. That way I have some length in my cabling install. If I only plan for gigabit to the desktop and I only install cabling that will support gigabit, when I go to upgrade and try to run 10 gig to my desktop, I have to tear out all the cabling and put in new cabling. Well, that's not very smart. So they say you should plan at least one level of performance above what your current needs are. That way I have some length of use out of my cabling. This makes upgrades easier. So if I install a cabling that'll handle 10 gig, in my closet, if I'm running gigabit to the desktop and I take that switch out and I put a new switch in that handles 10 gig, I don't have to do anything else to my cabling. My cabling already handles it. This will be relatively easy. I can replace the closet equipment, the switches, and the workstation equipment, my PCs, my NICs, my servers, and I'll be running at 10 gig to the desktop. Yay! And to do that, one way to ensure the upgrades will work is use our standard base install, 568C standard install for our cable system. That's important. Common applications. There's a table in the book that shows you common applications for Ethernet. The amount of bandwidth I use for downloading a file, that sort of thing. Yes, I'm going to refer to this one, the one we made up, getting us to think again along the same category. If I need gigabit to the desktop, I can get by with 5E. But if I need 10 gig the desktop, I should be thinking 6. Category 6 cabling, that would at least handle an upgrade to 10 gig down the road. That should be kind of a bare minimum. That's what I should be thinking when I'm installing cabling, and that's why they developed this. I can use this as a method of saying this particular cabling will handle this bandwidth, but I can also use this as, hey, I want to install cabling that can handle 10 gig. I best be using this category of cabling over here. I can use it both directions, and that's what they're telling you to do. Ensuring the performance of whatever category I pick, category 6 standards requires more than just category 6 components. Okay, it is important if I install category 6 cabling, I better be using category 6 patch panels. I better be using category 6 outlet jacks. I better be using category 6 patch cables. Okay, I better be using all that so it's the same. The old saying, your system's only as good as the weakest link, right? That is true. If I install category 6 cabling but I use 5E patch cables, my system is only basically useful to 5E levels. It is as strong as the weakest link. So the one thing I need to do is I make sure all my components are matching standard, but I also need to make sure my techniques, my locating the cable, routing the cable, installation techniques are just as important. Those are things we're going to cover as the semester goes on. So to ensure proper performance to the level desired, I need to do these things. I need to use the proper materials. Again, Category 6 cabling, Category 6 patch panels, Category 6 outlet jacks, Category 6 patch cables, all those must be the same and of good quality. I need to use properly trained installers. Again, for somebody that's installing Category 6 cabling, they should be trained to be able to do so. As we do labs this semester, I'm going to show you techniques to install this stuff correctly. And lastly, individually test and certify each link. That's correct. Later on this semester, we will get a certification meter on it, and we will test our cabling to that level to verify it is running at that specified level. So we're going to pick out proper materials as we go. We're going to show you proper techniques to install it, and when we're done, we are going to certify that our cabling is to that level. These are all important pieces for this. Need for speed. Why do I need a higher network speed? Well, okay, most of us already know this. As we increase the information we're sending, once upon a time we were not streaming video. Nowadays we are streaming video. Well, our bandwidth, we need more bandwidth to be able to handle that. So I need I kind of think this through. I need a gigabit switch, so therefore I need cabling to handle gigabit. I need patch cables to handle gigabit. Blah 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 blah. I need a bigger system to handle more data that I'm streaming through. And again, there's another table in here that shows you roughly how much bandwidth you need to transfer a file and that sort of thing. But again, I'm planning whatever my need is now. I should be planning on the next higher level when I install my cabling. And they also throw an idea out here that generally accepted utilization limit for Ethernet is in the 60-70%. When I start going above that, I start getting lots of errors and possibly collisions and other things in my network. So they try not to overload an Ethernet network. That's just kind of a little rule of thumb. Importance of category, yes, we talked about this before. As I look at my category table, the category when the installers make the let me say that again. When your cable manufacturers make the cabling, they're doing it to a certain method that the cable is of a certain structure, and because it has a certain structure, it's able to handle X amount of bandwidth. So it's able to do that. They stamp on the side category 5 or category 6. When they do that, they're telling you, look, this cabling is of such a structure that it will handle this level of performance. That is important, and all the components in your system should be of that category so it all goes together and is able to support that bandwidth. That is important. And it's all because how the data, the signaling, the data is being sent through the cabling. We'll talk a little bit more about that when we do our cabling or our cable chapter, chapter 5, or media chapter. Over the years, there have been, category 5 and category 5E, category 6 and category 6A, if you will, or 6E. Well, what has happened is when they started making the cabling, they figured it was, oops, I think I jumped ahead of myself here. Actually, no, that's where I need to be. The manufacturing methods exceeded the performance parameters so well that it was even better than 5. So they said, well, this is enhanced. It actually handles more bandwidth than we thought it was going to. So they created the 5E. And the same thing was true about 6. The techniques were so good, it kind of superseded 6, so they called it 6A or 6 augmented. Some of us can think of it as 6E, 6 enhanced, same idea. So that's why when we look back, I think I have my table back here. Let me zoom back real quick. As you look at your table, you have the 5, 5E, 6, 6A. That's where those came from. They kind of superseded what their expectations were, so they almost made another category above there. Copper is limited to 100 meters for pretty much all applications. The 100 meter distance limitation for copper is trivial for fiber. Well, if you think back to our cable structure, copper cabling is typically from our closet out to workstations. That's your horizontal cabling. Anything between floors is typically fiber. Or anything between closets is typically fiber because fiber can go rather large distances. Fiber can handle 100 meg, gigabit, 10 gig, and can handle 10 gig up to 300 meters easily. Multi-mode fiber, and single mode fiber can handle 10 gig up to 10 kilometers. So fiber is typically used between your closets, between buildings, possibly even between sites. in a network. So this is typically your backbone, your vertical cabling or connection between buildings, if you will. 560 AC standard will require only two cables at each workstation. Must be 5E or better for phone, and one must be 5E or better for data connection. And they say, hey, maybe you might want to make one of these fiber. Well, okay, maybe. There hasn't been a need to have fiber at your desk yet, but that might change down the road. It's hard to tell what fiber 10 or 15 years will bring down the road. It is possible. The future of copper cabling, fiber alternative equals considerable bandwidth increases, but also greater costs. So far, copper seemed to have a limit, but they keep coming out with advances to get copper to be able to handle more bandwidth. So copper's still hanging in there. Fiber is going to still continue to be that interlink between buildings and that sort of stuff. So fiber tends to be when I need large bandwidths, I put in fiber. When I need great distances, I put in fiber. When I need immunity from interference, noise, electrical noise, that sort of thing, I put in fiber. All good reasons for choosing fiber over copper, but copper still seems to be working in the horizontal cabling, from the closet out to the workstations links. Wireless is practical for mobility, but I do have interference and security issues for that. So a lot of companies installed a whole bunch of wireless, 5-10 years ago, but a lot of companies have dialed back on that because of security reasons, interference problems. So wireless has a piece in here, but it has its own challenges as well. Demise of copper is not imminent, but it will not meet all the needs of a network as well. So there's usually a mixture of copper to desktop, fiber between closets, fiber between buildings, and wireless for mobility. That seems to be the formula for now, and probably will be for at least a while, at least a handful of years. So there's Chapter 4. Quick overview of Chapter 4.